Welcome to The Boundaries Within, where we explore the evolving concept of internal self-determination. Since World War I, self-determination has been a foundational principle, shaping the 20th century legal and political order and continuing to influence discussions on statehood and community rights today.
Internal self-determination also refers to the right of groups to shape their political and cultural futures within existing state boundaries. Unlike external self-determination, which focuses on independence, internal self-determination offers a framework for autonomy within a state, balancing minority rights with territorial integrity.
Thank you, Romane. However, over time, this principle has become a cornerstone in addressing systematic inequalities and the preservation of cultural identities. Today, we will explore how it operates in practice by comparing Catalonia and Kurdistan, two cases that challenge the resilience of modern states and the international legal order. Let's dive in.
First, we will discuss the roots and the evolution of the concept of self-determination. Secondly, we will talk about the similarities and differences between the Catalonia and Kurdistan cases. And finally, we will highlight the limitation of current human rights framework and international law. Hey, Marina, can you explain what the audio is?
Yes, sure. This is the vibrant sound of one of the many Kurdish protests fighting for self-determination that happened over the last decades.
Thank you, Marina. In order to deepen our understanding of self-determination, maybe we can start exploring the roots of this concept.
Yes, of course. So the concept emerged after World War I, firstly as a principle to address colonialism and promote the right of peoples to their independence. By the mid-20th century, it gained formal recognition in international law through the UN Charter and the 1966 Human Rights Conventions.
So, self-determination was more like a tool against colonialism then?
That's right, but the concept has changed a lot over the last years. Dr. Maria Neus, who is herself Catalan, and she's also an expert specializing in self-determination, state sovereignty, and territorial conflicts, explains.
The idea was that if this was expanded as a universal right, not just to colonies, this would provoke constant disruption of borders and again generate insecurity, wars, and of course, none of the powerful states wanted to allow their own internal groups to secede.
I see. This shift highlighted the tension between maintaining territorial integrity and acknowledging the diversity within modern nation-states.
That's right, Romane, and she also elaborates.
The idea of internal self-determination emerges much more in the 80s and 90s as a way to recognize certain level of autonomy. So it is a form of recognizing that there is no nation state in the pure sense.
So, the lack of this notion of nation state creates different problems in nowadays movements, right? It becomes clear to us how it affects movements like Catalonia and Kurdistan.
Exactly. For example, we understand the difficulty of protecting minority rights within states while preserving its sovereignty, and Claire Maxwell, who is an expert in the Kurdish diaspora, gave us critical insights into the Kurdish case.
Kurds are people that are in some ways on the peripheries of these nation states, on the peripheries of these power structures. Their existence challenges national myths.
So it becomes evident that the principle of internal self-determination, while conceptually robust, has not been universally embraced. International bodies have resisted expanding its application beyond the colonial framework, revealing a lack of adaptability of modern states, as we'll see in our case studies. Let's begin by looking at Catalonia, for example. The Catalans have had a special status, a certain level of autonomy, since 1975. Their government, the Generalitat, has been allowing them to internally self-determine their political and cultural future within Spain.
Exactly, but it is important to remember that this is still an ongoing fight. Fiscal constraints limit Catalans' exercise of their political autonomy, and also Spanish culture is continuously regarded as superior. So, these underlying forms of oppression fuel tensions between the regional entity and the state. These tensions culminated during the 2017 referendum for independence that was held by the Catalan government, and as complemented by Dr. Torbisco,
Spain hitting voters and all this was like a bit of a shock. Even if the referendum had been declared illegal, you don't go with paramilitary police and hit massive amounts of peaceful voters. And the fact that they found questions so challenging already explains why this would be so threatened, like altering the borders or seceding for the states, something like it's a matter of life and death.
Dr. Torbisco highlights how self-determination can threaten state integrity, as seen in Spain. In the Kurdish case, there is another layer of complexity with its geographical fragmentation and the fragmented visions of what forms Kurdish autonomy should take.
There are very big divisions in terms of what self-determination should even look like. Is it more meaningful participation within flawed democratic structures? Is it sort of regional autonomy without declaring independence? Is it the emergence of a Kurdish nation state? These are different paths.
So, summarizing it, Catalonia's movement is driven by a demand for greater autonomy in response to perceived structural inequalities in cultural recognition and in the distribution of political power and resources within a democratic state, and also the belief that Catalonia contributes disproportionately to the central government, while also seeking for greater recognition for its linguistic and historical identity.
Yes, and on the other hand, Kurdistan's struggle is shaped by systemic marginalization, suppression of cultural and political rights, and the survival of its identity as an ethnic group across multiple authoritarian or semi-authoritarian regimes.
Yet, both movements challenge state sovereignty and national myths, revealing the broader implications of internal self-determination.
That's the thing. Internal self-determination can take many forms. It's an emerging concept, and it is still unclear how groups can exercise it. To legitimize and advance their claims, groups try to leverage the human rights framework with varying successes.
Catalonia's appeal to democratic participation led to a significant ruling from the UN Human Rights Committee, which condemned Spain under Article 25 ICCPR. Similarly, Kurdish cultural and linguistic rights saw incremental progress when Turkey pursued EU membership in the early 2000s.
Despite these advances, the reliance on international law has its limitations, as we'll explore next.
Yes, and Dr. Torbisco explained the importance of framing self-determination as a human right. She said,
Of course, when you raise the issue as a human right, I think there's much more legitimacy than if you raise it as just territorial sovereignty. I think very often with internal claims of self-determination, what you want is to move forward. So you want to claim group rights to have a shared system of sovereignty.
This is very interesting. Claire critiques the limitations of this approach, especially in the Kurdish context.
I'm tempted to say that the whole human rights regime has done absolutely nothing, which is true and it's not true. There's been an armed struggle for Kurdish independence and self-determination. Often, armed struggle arrives because of a mass belief in the failure of human rights structure.
Wait, but individual rights framework can still influence broader collective movements, right? The European Court of Human Rights ruling against Turkey's death penalty for Kurdish leader Öcalan is one such example, showing how individual rights can indirectly support broader movements.
Yes, that's true. Although we can notice that the UN, the Council of Europe, the ICJ all have had hands-off postures, reinforcing only the decolonization application of the concept, which does not define self-determination today. Dr. Torebisco explains the need for updated frameworks, saying,
we still don't have a real regulation about how to exercise this right, how to make it real, and in which conditions maybe the threshold of oppression or of discrimination is strong enough to say, okay, now we need to grant these people the right to decide on their political future.
I see. So the lack of international consensus leaves these movements in limbo. We can also understand this from Claire pointing out the UN's consistent rejection of Kurdish referendums. The prioritization of territorial unity, seen in cases like the 2023 ICJ advisory opinions on the self-determination of Palestinian people, continues to constrain minority aspirations.
Yet, as these movements persist, they still challenge us to rethink how internal self-determination can be meaningfully implemented within modern states. So, as we wrap up, the cases of both Catalonia and Kurdistan leaves us with thought-provoking insights. Both movements strive for internal self-determination, yet their paths diverge dramatically due to their political, cultural, and geographic realities. Catalonia operates within the framework of a democratic nation-state, while the Kurds navigate the fragmented landscapes of 4 different countries, contending with repression, geopolitical maneuvering, and also competing visions for autonomy.
What unites these struggles is their challenge to state sovereignty and national myth. Yet, the response to these movements, ranging from violent crackdowns to partial accommodations, highlight the limit of internal self-determination. The principle, as it stands, often fails to provide a clear, actionable framework for addressing the complex realities of minority aspirations.
Then, looking ahead, the future of self-determination as a norm really depends on its ability to adapt beyond a decolonization context. Will international law evolve to meaningfully address the demands of diverse peoples within modern states? Or will political interests continue to overshadow the ideas of autonomy and cultural survival?
As we've seen, the road to self-determination is far from straightforward, but it's also far from over. As one might say, the borders of identity are drawn not only on maps, but in the hearts of those who dare to dream beyond them.
Thank you so much for exploring self-determination with us. I hope this podcast gave you deeper insights about this topic, and we hope to see you at a different podcast soon.